again, we're getting into like the more complicated stuff here, but global versus local, and then pivot points, snapping, and proportional editing. These are all kind of tricky things. So let's deal with global versus local first. I'm going to send my 3D cursor back to the center. So Shift S, cursor to world origin is where I want it to go. And I'm doing this because I'm going to bring in a new cube, which is the best way to see global versus local origin space. So Shift A, cube. I don't know about the best, but it's gonna help us. Now I've just isolated that, and we're looking at this cube. Now I'm going to stay in object mode for this, and I want to scale this cube, but I want to scale it specifically on the Z-axis, so S and Z. And so when I tap that Z after tapping S, I'm only scaling it vertically. Right? So I'm going to scale it, shrink it down. Now this corresponds exactly to the Z-axis in the entire global space here, right? So now I want to go ahead and scale it on the Y-axis, which is the green one, so SY. Cool. And now I'm going to scale it on the X-axis, SX. So make it kind of thinner. So I've made kind of like a 2x4 board here just by scaling this X, Y, and Z axis. All right, well that's neat, but what about local? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate this thing, and I'm just going to rotate it on the X by 45 degrees. Now I think I've showed you this before, but let's go ahead and take the time to do it now. I can do something called numerical entry when I am doing any kind of scale, rotate, or move option. So in this case, I want to rotate it. So I want to take this board that I've just made. I'm going to call it a board. I know it's just a kind of a cube yet. And I want to rotate it around the X-axis in global space by 45 degrees. So R, X, 4, 5. And if I wanted it the other way, I would hit negative right now, and that would switch it so it would be the way that I wanted to. And if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, I can't move my mouse right now to it, but you'll see that it says rotation 45 along the global X. And sure enough, there it is. I'm going to hit Control Z, Command Z, and show you where I'd like you to look. It's going to show up right here in this space. So I'm going to do that one more time, but I want you to watch the numerical entry in that space. So with this object selected, I'll hit R, X, 4, 5. And you can see that it's going exactly where I want it to go with like perfect precision. I mean, I could have this be 47.5689, and it would be exactly 47.5689 degrees on the global X. Pretty darn close to 46, or 48, I think. So I'm going to do that one more time. RX 45, enter. Enter sets it, right? Otherwise, if you move around, then things will start to move again. So now that I've got it here, let's say I want to make this board, I want to actually move it on the Z a little bit too, so RZ, and let's just do 17%. So it's like off axis a little bit here. Now my Z axis, if I do grab Z, I'm moving it up and down here. I would just hit Command Z for that. I want to actually make this taller now. Remember, I hit Scale Z before, and now it's not kind of functioning the way I want to. It's scaling everything in the Z because it's no longer on the global X, Y, and Z. So this is tricky. There's now two different spaces. There is a coordinate space that this object sits in, and then there's a space that the object has itself. And the difference is global space is the space the object sits in, and local space is the space that the object has. So how do you change the scale of something on local space? Well, like I said, I want to make this bigger, taller, right? So if I hit Scale Z now, that's Z global. But if I want to hit it local, I'll hit Z one more time, Scale ZZ, and you'll see that now it's given me this as my Scale Z. Okay, well that's interesting because that means that the axes of the local space are slightly different. It's okay. There's a way to see that, but it's way too complicated. What we'll do right now is I'll just test the other ones. If Z wasn't the length, let's try X. Scale X, X. Nope, that's not it. So scale, I'll hit escape, scale Y, Y. There it is. That's the one that I was looking for. And now I can make this board actually taller or shorter depending on the space that I want to take it in. I think I errantly clicked, so I'll try that. Scale Y, Y. There we are. So that is global versus local space. There's something else that I want to kind of point out. In the user interface, it's right here. We can click down on this and we can see global transforms, local transforms, and then there's a couple others that I tend not to mess with, especially in the beginning. So what we're seeing is the difference between global and local space. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to hit X to delete it, hit Shift A, add a cube, and then I'm going to rollerball kind of just rotate this. So RR for rollerball rotate, and I'm going to scale on the Z. It's S, Z, Z, and we see that that gives us that space. Oh, sorry, let me do that one more time. S, Z, Z, S, X, X, and then we'll see the Y one next. S, Y, Y. So I'm just tapping that twice to change it from global space to local space. I want to say something, especially if you're working with students in IOB and for yourself, stay on global space as long as possible. In fact, if you have a little twee scene that's like isometric or something like that, you can make on the origin and then move the object into space once it's perfectly made. But teaching students early days how to go between global and local can be really overwhelming. I think it's important as a basis, so I'm starting it here. But yes, this is how you do it. I'm going to give you a minute for this as well. We've got about 10 more minutes today for the lesson, and we're doing pretty good on timing. So go ahead and give it a minute. You should be able to edit in global and local space. So make an object, rotate it, scale it.